Take a seat.
Vikram, you had a question. Sorry, that has to be the last one, I'm afraid.
Sorry, I'm Vikram from the Business Times. Thank you, Minister, for that very articulate and clear exposition of the policy, as usual. But I think most people agree with your rationale that if road usage is too cheap, you're going to get congestion over time. I think the issue that people have is what happens if you get the worst of both worlds? You pay more and there's still congestion. That is to say, people do not switch because the alternatives aren't there in enough quantity. So that raises the related question of sequencing. That is, why not first do all the wonderful things that you have planned for the future, expanding the system, adding more trains, increasing the alternatives, and then after you've done that, then raise ERP? Why front load the ERP? I think these are two questions that people have. Thanks.
In 1964, the British government commissioned a report. It was called the Smith Report, and to look into congestion charging. So it was a long time coming. And many of the principles were similar to the one that we have effected in Singapore. Politically very, very difficult to do. And the argument that was put forth was, why don't you build up your public transport first? Well, 1964, finally they took a maverick mayor to do that. In 2003, that's how long it takes. In the meantime, you get congestion in London at enormous cost. So what have we done here? In preparation for the system-wide changes that we wanted to do this year, we took steps to increase capacity first. So in August last year, for most motorists, the alternative is really some form of express service, whether it be the train or whether it be the buses. So in August last year, we started to roll it out, the premium bus services. And that has taken off quite well. Yeah. The other thing that we consciously did, deliberately, was to tighten up on the quality of service standards. That is related to Sonia's question about frequencies. We tighten up on the frequencies. So to ensure that even for the basic buses, that we increase that. So if you look at the numbers, the ERP displacement, we estimated, I'm speaking from memory, so this might be a bit off, but I think roughly this is the ballpark figure. I think it's like 8,000 passenger car trips will be displaced. It's people who are taking cars into the city, they will be displaced because of the changes. In anticipation of that, we ramp up capacity. 18,000 for the trains, and I think about 6,000 additional bus trips. We increased that. So we're conscious of what you said, that in order to do this, you've got to sequence it right. You've got to make sure that there is a viable alternative for people to decant to. So that's what we did. What we can't do, you see, politically it's easier to do it this way, that we know we have a congestion problem, we know it's building up, but politically it's very difficult to do, so we find a reason not to do it. And we said, well, let's not do it now, give me some time, and I'll build up your public transport system. As I said, in London, they did that in 1964, and they finally effected it in 2003, a real long time. Yeah? And we could have done that, but the underlying problem would just get worse and worse and worse. And that's the reason why we did all this as a package. We said, well, we need to do this thing holistically to address the underlying congestion problem.
So there was one hand that went up there. Can I just take that? Yeah. Sorry, just one last question. Yep.
Thank you. I'm Mayuko Tani from Nikkei. It's about your speech in Parliament recently. You mentioned that it's best for public transportation company to be run privately, so that it will be run efficiently. But it was back in April, I think, that MRT suddenly increased 700 or 800 trips of trains per week, barely after 2 months, one or 2 months after you announced the master plan of transportation, which means the MRT congestion was very bad for a long time. MRT could have increased the train trips way earlier than waiting your government's policy. So I'm thinking, still the companies are making a lot of profits. It's not only covering the operating cost, but making a lot of profits. Isn't there any way that the government can control a little, or not really control, but regulate a little more, or guide or lead in a way that transportation companies can run efficiently, at the same time run not for the shareholders, but for the passengers, users?
Let me put in context my comments in Parliament. It was in answer to a question which suggested that all public transport operators in Singapore should be social enterprises. And that if you have social enterprises, then you would have high quality and affordable public transport. And where I disagreed was this basic contention. My point was that it is not incompatible to have commercially driven public transport operators that delivers affordable, high-quality public transport. So I think we've got to put that comment in context. And the key question you have to ask here is, if that is the public interest, affordable, high-quality public transport, how do we achieve that in the Singapore context? And what we have done is not to decree that the public transport operators must be state-owned, because the ultimate collective surely is a state-owned enterprise, right? It's the ultimate collective. But rather to have a regulatory framework that you mentioned just now. We do have a regulatory framework. We have a price cap formula that ensures that the operator cannot charge a fare that the operator thinks the market can bear. That means they can't, in that sense, profit maximize. They can't do that because we put a cap there. And by putting the cap, we force the operator, therefore, to be efficient in order to earn a profit. And secondly, we have quality of service standards for the buses and operating performance standards for the trains that ensure that even as they pursue profits, that it is not at the expense of the commuters in terms of service standards. So that's how we do that. Beyond that, should we direct the operator, micromanage it? I think not. I think that would be inefficient. So we have certain standards that we think that they should adhere to, and we leave it to them how best they can achieve it. It is the same, like, say, the premium buses before we loosen up in August last year. We could take a prescriptive approach to premium buses and saying exactly what sort of buses would qualify. Should it be a mini bus, a medium-sized bus, a big bus? Put all sorts of technical specifications. Or we could say, no, let's make it simple. So what we have done in the case of premium buses is simply to say the principal control level here is that they can't price compete with the basic buses and cannibalize the basic services. And by doing that, you have seen how the market has taken off. You allow the market to deliver the outcome we want. So that's the approach we have taken. Yeah, go ahead.
Promise you this will be the last, Minister. Promise. Promise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Minister, a follow-up to the lady's question. Corrective action was taken by MRT to deal with the congestion during peak hours only after a directive or guidance from the government. So the question is regulation and public transport management why wasn't they able to take corrective action before a directive from government because of the new public transport policy?
Well, Pek Hua is here, and she will tell you that actually we didn't direct her. The additional buses that she put in was because, I think, based on her anticipation of what the demand should be and how best to cater to the commuters. As I said, we set what are the operating performance standards, and then we leave it to the operator to achieve it. So you take crowding, for instance. Now, we'll be monitoring this. We are nowhere close to Tokyo. In Tokyo, you put in a morning peak something like 7 persons per square meter. In Singapore, it's probably about 3.9, about 4. So in Singapore, you don't get compulsory morning massages when you take the trains. You don't get that. We're nowhere close to that. So if you look at the average loading before we kick in all the measures was probably about 1,400 packs. After the measures came in, and after the additional trains that SMRT put in, is about 1,300. But there is a range. Remember, these are averages. So the range might swing from 1,350 to 1,450. And if you are closer to the 1,450 end, well, you think that, well, it's getting a little bit crowded. What is the load that it can actually take? It's probably about 1,700. 1,700 is where it gets really, really congested in the train. So we're nowhere close to that. But individual person's experience might be different. Now, I go down. Whenever we get feedback, I'll go down, I have a look at it. And sometimes it really has to do with commuter behavior. The trains, if they were to spread out, more people could get into the trains. But our commuters tend to bunch at the door. You just have to go down and look at it during the morning peak or the evening peak. They're all bunching at the doors. No one wants to go to the center because they are worried that when it comes to their stop, they can't battle through all the other commuters and get out. So I've tried it out myself. Right, peak hour, I've gone into the center. So if I'm going to stop at Jalan Besar, I move towards the door before I hit Jalan Besar and I get out. There's enough dwell time at the station to allow me to exit. So part of it is actually commuter behavior. We don't have it like, say, in Japan, where they have official pusher, white gloves chaps, and at peak hour they just push you all into that. We don't have that. If we go down that road, we'll call them ambassadors, and they'll talk politely, say, please move in. Also, we're making certain changes in the trains. With SMRT is refurbishing it, and you'll be interested to know it impacts on commuters' behavior again. See, previously, the handrail is in the center. So because you have in the center, people are worried that they go into the middle. They really have to navigate around all the other commuters. But we refurbished it and we shifted some of these handrails to the side. And when you shift it to the side, commuters are more willing to go into the middle of the carriage because now they have like a clear pathway out. So these are some of the things that I think part of it is educating our people. They say that, look, you've got to really get yourself into the center. If you're at the door, we'll have a problem. And again, you've got to put this thing in perspective. When we increase the frequency of the trains, some said, well, the litmus test is if I stand on the platform, morning peak, and I wait for the first train to come, can I get up on the first train? That can't be right. Because, you see, we have sized the train. Right? This thing has been built in the 80s. The platform and the train, they have all been sized. So we can't add additional carriages. It's not possible. What we are doing is to increase the frequency. That means one train goes, the next train would come. So the test that you should put is that when I stand on the platform during the morning peak, how long do I take before I get onto a train and onwards to my destination? That is the correct test. So I've gone down there, I have a look at it. For some, they can't get in the first train, but the trains now come about 2 minutes interval. So 4-6 minutes, you'll be up on the train. So I think that's the way to look at it when we're saying we're increasing the train capacity. But Singaporeans have high standards. I said that. The media carried what I said. Short while later, I got an email from a lady with 5 other signatures on it, saying, "What sort of world-class train system you have in Singapore? Every morning and morning peak, it takes me 5 minutes to get onto my train. 5 minutes." So extremely high standards. We endeavor to try to please them.
Thank you, Minister. I'll invite Ambassador Pani to make his closing remarks.
Thank you, Patrick. This meeting has really taken on the shape of a town hall meeting where people engage the minister, ask questions of concern to us. I think it still gives us hope for the Speaker's Corner. One of these days, we might invite the minister to come to the Speaker's Corner and engage him on a similar topic. Let's think about the topic. Just about a few weeks ago, in a neighboring country, a prime minister went on the train system, and that's the first time he discovered how congested the train was. And a week after that, the budget came, and he made special provisions. But we have in Minister Raymond Lim, a minister who goes down fairly frequently to watch the situation in the train. And that speaks a lot for this particular minister, whom we have known to be an action-oriented person. But today, I would like to thank him for coming down to this gathering and sharing the problems that we are facing, but also the hopes for the future. So I'd like to ask you all to join me in showing our appreciation to the minister.
Okay, I want coffee.
Take a seat.